Okay, now our next speaker, Ed Brojerdi, is someone that I met a couple months ago on the beach at Cannes. He's just a prolific thinker, speaker. His bio is so extensive I had to put my glasses on to kind of get through the whole thing. Look, he's a CEO of KBS in New York. I first met him a couple months ago and I interviewed him, and the interview is on our website for the ARF. Here he is. And as the leader and the CEO of KBS, he's worked for a number of different important brands. He's going to, I think, talk about BMW, Harman, Nike, Puma, to mention a few, but these are really iconic brands. What he believes in and the story that he evangelizes is not just storytelling, but story doing, and really bringing forward the consumer conversation. He's a passionate evangelist for the consumer as well. He has been honored so many times you won't imagine how young he is. Ed was one of Ad Age's 40 Under 40 in 2014, Ad Week 27 Young Influentials in 2015, alongside Mindy Kaling and Gigi Hadid. And he's spoken at South by Southwest. He was an agency innovator by Internationalist Magazine, recognized by Adweek, the One Show Webby Awards, and Communication Arts. He has over 15 years of experience on blue chip brands. So what's going to happen is he's going to be sharing with you his vision on mobile first and some specific examples. And then we're going to really have some fun with it. I want you all to think of what your questions are, because I'm going to kick it off with a few questions as a panelist. But Sarah Watts is going to join us back here, and we're going to get out these ideas from the top of the day to the bottom of the day, and we're going to have a really good old-fashioned fun discussion, and then we're going to go off and have some dinner and drinks. Okay? So with that, Ed, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much, Gail. Much appreciated. Thank you. I really would like Gail to be my PR spokesperson going forward. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to the ARF, thank you to Gail and everyone for allowing me to come here and speak to you. So there were some super impressive discussions and presentations earlier. And what I'd like to I want to talk about mobile first from a creative, from a go-to-market perspective, from a launch of a notable product perspective. And this is a project that we worked on with BMW. And I'm assuming most of the folks in this room are familiar with the BMW brand. Their awareness is fairly good across the globe. But what's interesting, when you work on a brand like BMW, it's comprised of many sub-brands. Literally two sub-brands, one which is M, and all you need to know is this is the performance division of BMW. These are those sort of iconic performance cars that are the roots of BMW. And a new sub-brand for them, which is called I. Right, and you might have seen some of these really funky, fun cars out in the world. The i3, a little boxy electric vehicle. The i8, a very futuristic, spaceship-looking sort of electric plug-in hybrid vehicle that they have. So those are two sub-brands underneath the BMW portfolio. But when you're doing product launches, and one thing we're all familiar with, when you're a car manufacturer, even to this day, you're very product-oriented when you're launching and you're communicating, right? A new model is coming out. That's when investment goes behind going to market and letting the world know about the all-new 3 Series or 5 Series or so on and so forth. Now, over time, we are attempting to shift that. We do want to shift to a consumer-centric approach to product launches, especially on the automotive side. And it's a very simple reason, just efficiency, right? So why are we going to communicate about the launch of a new car if you just leased a car 2 months ago, right? You don't really need to see that communication. It's inefficient. We need to be consumer-centric, and that migration is beginning to happen. The other thing that you most likely know about the automotive community and automotive communication, if you've watched TV in the past few years. There's brand advertising for automotive, and then there's something called tier 2 or 3, right? And these are dealer ads. These are ads that you're seeing, in essence, a car driving down a windy road, and then right at the end, you're going to see a lease price come up, your local dealer, and your activation, right? That's tier 2, tier 3 kind of advertising. We're getting to the point where that kind of communication needs to evolve. We're getting to the point where we have to push beyond that. And again, TV is still a big part of our mix. TV will continue to be a part of the mix. But it serves a slightly different purpose, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So what you're seeing up there, that car in the corner, this is the BMW M2. This is an all-new vehicle. This is the first time they've ever made an M2. Now, the great thing is, if you're an enthusiast, if you're a car guy or car girl, you know about you know about these cars, and these cars sell, right? We don't necessarily have to communicate. But for us, the launch of this new car was actually a brand building opportunity. Even though this is the entry-level vehicle in M, this is a halo vehicle for the brand in general. There's a lot of love for this vehicle and other M vehicles with the enthusiasts. But our brief and our partnership with BMW was around expanding this potential consumer set, bringing in a whole new audience to BMW that potentially is not considering them, and kind of shifting from just the enthusiast to the enthusiastic. Right, and that's something you're going to see in some of the work today. So the way we wanted to launch this, and obviously appropriate for today, we wanted to do BMW's first global mobile campaign launch. And what I mean by that, and again, in this category, this is unheard of, we did not want to do anything traditional. There's no TV for the launch of this car. There's no print for the launch of this car. Certain global markets, certain smaller markets will do certain activities like that. That's just the way the operation goes. But we launched this campaign without a single TV spot. In essence, for that brand, this is unheard of. And our idea was actually a pure mobile, social, influencer-led launch for this product. So you might know that's Gigi Hadid. And speaking of influencer marketing, you know, we're all hearing about influencers. We're hearing about the role and the audiences they have. We contemplated quite a few different celebrities for this, right? We had folks like Margot Robbie, who's an A-list celebrity in many films, starring with Will Smith, so on and so forth. But when you start looking at the profiles of some of these individuals online, when you look at their following, their audiences, the engagement rates of their audiences, there's a certain layer of micro-celebrity that is highly, highly effective. They convert, their audience cares about every single thing they post and do and talk about. And so we wanted to bring some of that and bring some of their owned audiences into this work. So what you're going to see right now, even though it's full screen and feels like a TV spot because you're looking at it on a big screen, this was an asset made exclusively, again, for mobile and social. So what we'll do is we'll watch this and we'll talk about how this activated and went to market.
Can you keep your eyes on Gigi? How about in the first ever BMW M2? So, which one is she in?
Any guesses as to which vehicle she's in? It's very hard. Pretty good guess back there. So, a couple things.
Can you keep your
Next slide here. So, why did we want to do mobile first for this? So, the target that we were going after spends about 5.5 hours a day on their mobile device and potentially only about an hour and a half on classic sort of lean back television. Okay, obvious stats there. But we wanted to open ourselves up to an audience that actually is not in market to buy a car right now. And that was females between about 12 to 17 years old. And again, what we're doing is long-term brand building, right? So BMW is an iconic brand around for 100 years, and our conversation with them is, what does the next 100 years look like for that brand, for their products, for their portfolio? So we do mobile first, and we launch with this, and there was a lot of activity. So what you saw there was done with some paid media. We did go with Facebook, and I know Facebook was here speaking earlier. This came up right in your stream. We did a lot of paid and owned and earned programs on Instagram, on Snapchat. We did live streams on Periscope. In essence, all the activations were mobile activations, right? So we were doing live streaming on Periscope the second the car was announced to the press globally, right? Usually the way it works when you launch a car, there's an embargo date and time. At that point, all the world can start posting pictures, writing articles, journalists write reviews about it. At 6:01, we started streaming live video of this car being revealed for the first time to the world, right? Quite a few people were engaged on that. Now, what we did here, though, we did not want to create just a piece of video content that we put on mobile. We've all heard about creating engaging content, trying to pull consumers into the work. And sometimes that works, but for the most part, and let's be honest with each other, we don't all want to interact with ads, right? As cool as it is, not every one of us wants to interact with an alcohol spirit brand, a car brand, whatever it may be. We don't necessarily want to do it. So we had to do something that was going to be interesting and engaging, regardless if it was an advertisement or just a general piece of content that you would engage with. And if you saw, the simple idea behind this is cup game, right? We all familiar with the cup game, right? There's a red ball, and you move the cups around, and you're trying to guess which cup the ball's in. So this was a real shoot. There's no editing tricks. This was done in one take. We did rehearse for 3 days with some very pro drivers to get to the point. And we had GG for 1 day only, right? So everything had to be done properly to be able to execute this. So one of the things you might have noticed, it was pretty hard to guess which car she was in. That was intentional. Our goal was to get about 4 replays on this video. So for the most part, it's almost impossible to figure it out the first time. The hint and the trick is, if you watch the shadows, you can figure out which car she's in. Again, because there's no cutaways, right? It's one linear take. But to really make it immersive, while we were on the shoot, we captured 360 video, right? And what you're seeing here is an example of that. And at any point, as a consumer, and again, I'd love for you guys after this, just go into YouTube and search for Eyes on Gigi and you'll see this. There's a 360 video where you can track a single car for the entire time. You could look around, you could look at the sky, you could look at that racetrack and the runway. It's up to you as a consumer. It was fascinating to see how people were interacting with that. We were getting so many replays. We were seeing in the comment section people talking about, oh, here's a trick. Why don't you watch the shadow of the first car, but don't lose sight of this? Hey, everyone, if you look at and point the camera this way, you can do. People were working together to try to decipher this, right? And we had a lot of fun associated and tangential content that came to this. So let's say you start guessing, right? And we had different ways you can guess which car. We had fun little supplemental videos that would play sort of that music like, nah, you didn't guess correctly, try again. And we had just all this associated content that came up. And a couple interesting things happened. One thing we always do is real-time social sentiment analysis, and we modify the creative work that's in market as well based on this, or we continue to fuel the fire. This started out in a very, very successful way. Now, obviously, our clients love reading things like this, the best advertisement ever, love seeing that. But what we really enjoyed was that we weren't using 360 video just for the sake of using the new tech innovation, right? And that's one thing we want to be careful about. Everyone talks about mobile, time to go on mobile. Sure. And it has become, for us, in many ways, for BMW's consumer, the primary screen, not the secondary screen, not only from shopping behaviors, but now our consumers are engaging with more brand content on mobile than any other platform. But what we want to make sure we do, just like BMW uses innovation and technology for a purpose, we want to make sure we're using it for a purpose, right? So this was an idea that 360 actually helped you decipher what vehicle she was in. So we talked a bit earlier about wanting to get into arenas that BMW doesn't necessarily get into, talking to audiences and segments that normally aren't interested in sports cars. And one interesting thing to be in GQ and Vogue, right? So obviously the male demographic is going to know about this car, but because again of the influencer and the association and how we launched this campaign, we got picked up in quite a few fashion trades as well. Again, opening up that aperture, opening ourselves up to a whole new segment. We wanted to over-index on females. Even though this is one of the most masculine products in the portfolio, we want them to come into this brand, and we don't want to just communicate the traditional way of showing them the X3 or the X5 SUV. We want to show them the bread and butter of the brand, what this brand stands for, tell a story about it, and engage in a proper way. So again, obviously all the car mags and the trades, those things are going to cover this because this car is fantastic. The car is winning all the reviews. We know the car is going to sell itself. But for us, this wasn't a sales opportunity, even though that matters in everything we do for BMW. This was a huge brand building opportunity that's future facing. Now, we want to turn interest into progressive action and interaction with us. So we've been deploying AI, artificial intelligence, human-assisted bots for quite some time in our interaction with some consumers. One of the things that we did when we launched this campaign, there was no dead ends, right? When you're watching that video on a social platform, everything has deep links somewhere else. You're never going to be requested to, even the eyesongg.com, sure, that's great for search. You can go directly to that URL, but we're never asking you to go from one platform to the next without just touching, swiping, tapping, or clicking, right? So again, path of least resistance, no dead ends. So we launched a whole AI-assisted communication platform. In essence, people could be asking tons of different types of questions. We had created a plethora of content that we could serve up in real time back to them around features, around innovation, so on and so forth. And then very quickly, we can transition them to the local dealer. So something that's going on here, we have a ventures group at our agency, and we get early access into some of the most novel marketing tech and innovation ideas coming out. So there are Message.ai, which is an artificial intelligence company, as well as like PlaceIQ for location-based marketing. So one of the things we did, based on your location, if you wanted to interact with a sales individual, find more about this car, would a tap to call functionality. And this number was localized down to zip code level. And this was all dynamic. This was happening all in real time so that a consumer, again, is not hitting any roadblocks, right? It's so simple for us to lose a lead in this process, and we're responsible from awareness all the way down to conversion at the dealership and being able to track that path. Lastly, one of the most engaged pieces on almost any car manufacturer's website, especially BMW. BMW is the #1 most cross-shop brand out in the car category. Is something called the BYO. This is the build your own. So when you go on BMW's website, you can pick a car, pick a color, pick options, so on and so forth. We know that if you're configuring a car, you're very, very likely to go to a test drive. If you take a test drive, you're very likely to convert. So what we did is we started porting some of the high-level functionality and adding a buying online feature. Now in the US, you're not allowed to sell from an OEM to a consumer directly, right? We've been reading about this with Tesla for quite some time now and the battles they're going through. But if you partner with local dealers and if it's all dynamic and geo-located, you're able to do a buy online function and drive them directly to a dealership that will then truncate the process, the paperwork, and in essence replicate a mobile commerce shopping experience as much as we can without breaking any of the laws that are on the marketplace. So some of the results, I know this is a room that cares about data and quantifying all these things. 36 million online views, and the majority of these were earned. The paid media behind this, even though it's BMW and even though it's a car launch, was not that big. And again, I think people sometimes think you have this iconic global brand, you have unlimited budgets to do things. Not at all, not at all. Most of the budget went to Gigi, went to that production, right? Went to getting things done the right way. So we have to be clever about how we create ideas that are spreadable by design, right? And that was a big thing in this notion when we went to market. We had Gigi weeks in advance posting behind the scenes footage from the shoot, right? Static stills, the dress she was going to wear, asking her audience which one she should be wearing for the shoot, getting them engaged, getting them excited so that when the day came and we launched this, they would be there for her. They would be there for us and the brand. This is interesting, 40% lift in the social conversation. The reason it's interesting is there's so much social chatter already about this car from the enthusiast community, it's almost saturated. So all of this, new people to the brand, new people to the fold that weren't considering the brand or the product before. And again, as we discussed, the build your own configurations are a great indicator if we're going to convert that lead. And what was really exciting for us, and again, there were so many components of this campaign, it could take an entire day to sort of communicate it, but what was great, BMW tops YouTube's most viral VR 360 video. So as of now, this is the most watched 360 video on YouTube of all time. And this is beating some great work from Nike and some other iconic brands. And again, a lot of it is when you look at all the pieces that came together, right? We talked about influencer and influencer marketing. We talked about an idea that was inherently engaging an audience to participate without forcing it, without it feeling too much like an ad, right? Even though we're showing a car the entire time. Right? And that's key to BMW, right? It's not as if we showed a picture of the car and went off and told a separate story. The performance aspect, which is core to this brand, was there the entire time. But it was done in a way that wasn't the classic car driving down a road, up a mountain, and then someone saying the 0 to 60 times of it, so on and so forth. consumers don't care about that. So if they're going to find that information out in their own ways and the ways they need to, we were doing brand building here. And so this was fantastic for us, and it proved out that doing a mobile first launch without any TV support, without any traditional support, can truly have an impact for this brand. And this car is now sold out for about 1.5 years. You can't even get your hands on this car. So what's great, this proved out to us that we can push the envelope a little bit. We don't have to rely on some of those traditional ways to go to market for a brand like this that's been around for 100 years. And we can continue to innovate, show the performance aspects of this brand, bring in influencer marketing. Great way to utilize social and some of the emerging platforms, such as the live streams we were doing on Periscope. We had a whole set of activations with Snapchat. And so this truly was a holistic 360 mobile campaign, literally and figuratively. So super exciting for us. This is the first of this kind of work with BMW that we're doing, and we're hoping that this is just the start. And I think there's some fun stuff you guys are going to see towards the end of the year that we're going to launch with BMW as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, so Sarah's a few minutes late. So how about if we take a couple questions from the
Sure.
audience
Let's
for
do it.
Ed first, and then shout out.
Which car was he actually in?
She was in number 5. Number 5. Yes.
Who guessed? Somebody did online.
Sure. I think they can control that from the room back there.
Yeah, let's watch that commercial a few times. That's a good idea. Have you driven one of those cars? That's what I want to know.
I have driven that car.
What was it like?
It's quite impressive. Actually, on that airstrip that we were doing the filming, and it's when you're around these pro drivers, it's unbelievable. I mean, these are the guys that are doing stunts in the Bond movies and Vanilla Sky and all these great things. It's unbelievable. They were shooting that at about 100 miles an hour, and the cars were coming within an inch of each other. Right, so this is so perfectly choreographed that one mistake and we would have totaled multiple cars, and we couldn't total any cars. So,
Can you keep your eyes on Gigi? How about in the first ever BMW M2? So, which one is she in?
it's pretty hard, right? There was a lot of debate with the client around how hard to make this. We went back and forth. Many were like, no, we want people to get in the first try. And for us, that would defeat the purpose.
Easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, that would defeat the purpose of what we were trying to do with this, right? And the type of engagement. We wanted people working together to figure this out in the comments, right?
Yeah, fascinating.
Out of the 36 million views, what portion is that, or was it virtual? 360.
So the 360 actually made up, I think, about 12 million of those views approximately, if I'm correct. So a very, very large portion. Obviously, it fueled itself. Once you start getting coverage of being the most viewed YouTube video for 360, you end up getting quite a bit more views because that started hitting general press. And also YouTube loved that, right? Because they want to tout that functionality, right, for their platform. So we helped them a little bit, and that helped fuel the PR sort of growth there.
And the record question, was ad blocking an issue for you guys?
No, it's ad blocking comes up a lot for us. Interesting enough, we don't necessarily encounter too much of that, especially when it comes to work with BMW. Again, there's a lot of the television work is work you'd want to block. I'd even want to block some of the ads that we do, trust me, because it's so retail oriented, right? It's all about getting into a dealership, giving you a lease price, and converting. We try to do more and more work, and what's great is we have a very, very progressive global CMO for BMW. And her point of view, which is so right, is there is no more sort of retail ad that's local. If it's out in the world, it's brand work. If you can search for it, if you can pull it up, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you can go on in Google and search for it, it's brand work. So what we're starting to do is making sure a lot of the work we're doing is just great, engaging content, programs, experiences that ideally doesn't feel like an ad.
Hannah, you had a question?
You mentioned that one of the goals for the campaign was to start a conversation with women 12 to 17. Can you talk a little bit about the results you guys got there?
For sure. So one of the things we were doing, we were going in and analyzing a lot of the comments that would come in Gigi's posts, right? So she was posting on Instagram, on Facebook. And again, her audience is so big. I think last I checked, it was something like 24 million people that she has on social followers. So you're going through thousands of responses and comments. I would say almost all, if not all, were so positive. The sentiment was so high from that demographic because in a way, they're fanatics for her, right? So it's like she has this cult-like following. They saw that she got involved with a brand like this, is doing an activation. It just transferred the love right over. So it was highly successful with them. Now, we'll know in about 5 years or 10 years when they start purchasing cars, and we'll see if it actually mattered. But from a brand building perspective, you could just see literally people going, that age group, a 13-year-old girl go, 4 heart emojis, BMW. You know, that kind of thing. And so that's become our new gauge of success, heart emojis. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, no, it definitely resonated with the audience. And again, it's a long tail effect. It's something, again, it's pure brand building. This car is going to sell. That's just the way it is.
One more horse? Oh my goodness, there's a bunch. Okay, we'll have to take some more here. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you just talked about the, again, about the long-term brand building, which I think is so great because it hasn't always been done. But then you also talked about activation and
For sure.
You know, people going to do. What was the strategic plan?
Sure.
Connecting the 14-year-old young
Absolutely.
women with the actual purchase?
Absolutely. It's the classic sort of approach for us where there are people that are on a different end of the spectrum when they're ready to transact and purchase. So we knew that there were a good portion of the audience that were fence sitters, right? They were considering this car, they knew about this car, but they needed the performance aspect to be proven out. Now that's why when you look at the concept here, it wasn't just about the female target or the youth target. Those hardcore performance guys, those gearheads, those people who take this car to the track, they were just as interested in this work. It was not polarizing and pushing out one sector while trying to bring in a new one. So those enthusiasts, they were there guessing as much, and again, it's in the details. What they were talking most about, the exhaust noise of the car, right? So one of the things we do when you deal with a brand like BMW and you have, again, fanatics, every detail has to be perfect. So we knew this was going to be on a mobile device, but the way we recorded the exhaust, because we knew those fans who had never heard the exhaust in this car before, there were threads on message boards and forums just about that, about the handling as the car was going back and forth. You have these guys talking about the suspension and all these other things, all in the same piece of content.
Thank you.
Back there?
And how did you decide on a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model versus a Channing Tatum given the target?
Great question. Great question. So one of the things we do with BMW when we're looking at casting, when we're looking at who we're going to associate the brand with, we say if we project 10 years down the road and look back, are we going to be proud that we partnered with that person? Are we going to be, happy that this individual that we brought into the brand still reflects the brand? You'd be surprised how many people get filtered out when you use that criteria. I think a few years ago there was a Super Bowl idea with Justin Bieber. Didn't really go anywhere because I don't think in 10 years he was going to be the right thing for the brand. So when you look at Gigi and maybe some of her friends, there were a few of Gigi's friends that wouldn't be appropriate for the BMW brand. But when you look at the kind of way she portrays herself in media, the kind of brand she associates to, the stance she has on social good activation, so on and so forth, she was right for the brand. She made sense to bring into the fold. And in essence, she had to make the brand ambassador list. And BMW has a very specific sort of requirement set on who should be a representative of the brand. So a lot went into sort of determining if and how Gigi would interact with this brand.
Mitch?
And was the Cam go in
Mitch is doing this back there.
Hello, Gail. I'm so sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
your strategy? And did you have a backup camp? Did you show more than one idea?
No. So
That's pretty scary.
for sure. So we went in and part of the strategy in the upfront before we presented this creative we built a business case as to why mobile was primary screen, not a secondary screen for this audience, the amount of hours in the engagement. So all the classic metrics we've been talking about throughout the day, those were all built as a business case to show why we should do this. Sure, was it risky? Absolutely. There wasn't necessarily enough paid media behind this to guarantee success. Interestingly enough, when you do the analysis, we did a Super Bowl spot for them 2 years ago that was ranked as one of the top 20 Super Bowl spots of all time. When you look at the investment and the views and results of that, the investment and views and results, this actually performed better. So there's a business case that shows a mobile-first campaign financially and from efficacy and conversion performed better than a Super Bowl campaign.